Call the Board of Education and Public Hearing Audit Committee regular meeting to order at 5.
Buddy Gordon,
Yes, ma'am.
Tim Hean, Alex Louie,
Here.
Michelle Kelly, here, Jamie Wilson, here, Sean Duser,
Here.
David Cartwright.
Here. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Like we have no statement, yes, functions to address the public hearing. Presentation C4. That's all you want.
All right, hi everyone, good seeing you all again. So I believe you got these sent to you last week. There should be a larger document, the full financials, and then the graph analysis, which we'll go over today. If you wanted to read through those financials, I'd probably put you to sleep. The best place to go is what's called the management discussion and analysis. That kind of is a high level overview of it, kind of narrative format. So that'd probably be where if you wanted to read through and try to get the high points, that was where I would go. But I'm gonna get into this and we'll go right to page 3, audit reports. So the whole point of us coming out is to provide our opinion, give an audit opinion. You guys received an unmodified, clean audit opinion. It's the highest assurance we can give. So good job to Erin and her team. You know, it was a kind of a tricky year for them. They had a lot of leave in that office, but we still came through with a very clean audit. So good job, Erin. The next page, we have the yellow book, the government auditing standards. So because you're a governmental entity, you're required to have a yellow book audit. We have 2 findings here. One is the adjusting journal entries and preparation of financial statements. It's really mostly about us booking the GASB 34 numbers, the long range numbers, and preparing those financials. It's not really about us providing tons of journal entries to your numbers or anything like that. And then you also have a compliance, the compliance finding. New York State mandates 4% of next year's budget in unassigned fund balance. You're not alone. Almost nobody complies with that unless they're in some financial struggles. So you guys are at 6.2%, so you're a little over the 4%. But overall, you know, you're nowhere different than your peers, really. Uniform guidance, the 3rd letter we were provided, that is because you receive over 750,000 of federal monies. We audited your ARP program, so your pandemic funding. No findings related to that. Clean reports on both. The ARP, the learning loss, the comprehensive loss, all of them. So. All right, so GASB 34. So this starts the numbers. So this isn't really your day-to-day numbers. This isn't your budgetary numbers. This is looking at it from a long-range perspective. So this assets and these liabilities have your fixed assets in them, and then they also have your pension reporting involved. And those are really the 2 big drivers of these statements. Your assets, they're down slightly. You didn't really add a whole lot in fixed assets, not a whole lot of capital additions this year, but you depreciate about $2 million. That's what's driving that. Your liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, that is related to the pension reporting. And that's actually down a little bit this year. So those are more closer to being 100% funded than they were last year. I believe TRS went from like 97 to 99%. So that's kind of where you want them to be. And that's why your TRS rates really are kind of level right now. And then for the GASB 34, because of that, because there wasn't a big change in your pension reporting, no big swings here. You'll notice 2 years ago, there was a big swing in expense where the purple line jumped out. That's because the pension systems went from an asset to a liability. So that really impacts your expenses. But this year, pretty status quo, not a whole lot going on. Okay, so your general fund. So your total assets are down, liabilities are up slightly, fund equity is down. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about assets. So you can see here that far right column, that due from other governments, that is your BOCES receivable. It's really just a timing of when you got that payment. Last year, you owed like $1 million from BOCES. This year, nothing. They paid it before June 30th. So that's what's driving that. We'll go to the next slide. Not a whole lot changed here. You'll see the accounts payable line on the far left. That's probably the biggest jump. This is $70,000. Really timing of when you got checks out. Last year, you mailed all your checks on June 30th. This year, some straggled or went into July. So just they've got to be recorded as an accounts payable rather than a outstanding check. Equity, so here you can see you use about $1.1 million of your capital reserve, and that's what's really driving that far left column, restricted reserves. So that's what that decrease is, and that's what affected your fund balance on the first slide for general fund. Revenues, so your revenues are up about 500,000, and it's three things are affecting that. Your basic aid's up, your excess cost is up, aid is up, and then your BOCES aid was actually also up. So all three of those help drive your fund, your equity revenue up. And you can see on the next slide, I think if you go to it, how flat all the other revenues are. It's really state sources that went up, and all three of those are state sources. Expenditures, they're up about 1.3 million. So the majority of this, though, how that use of reserve comes out of the general fund, it goes out as an interfund expense going out. So that's 1.1 million of that 1.3 million. The remaining is employee benefits, actually, about 200,000 of employee benefits, health insurance, TRS, ERS, things like that. You can see that here. The far right column, that huge jump there may look kind of small when you compare it to your instruction cost, but it has a big impact. On the next slide, this is the same information, just looking at it based on what, instead of instruction versus general support versus transportation, this is looking at it. I kind of like this one better, where you spent your money. So the majority of your money is spent on salaries, but you can also see that employee benefits, the third group of off to from the right side, that's up quite a bit as well. And it, like I said, it's mostly health insurance, but also salary related benefits. All right, so this is looking at your revenues and expenditures together in comparison. You can see relatively tight. You know, that just shows good budgeting. Biggest jump is this year, actually, where you have a gap of 1.3 million, or like 800,000 is net income. If you were to take that transfer out, you actually made about 175,000. So it's still a positive year when you take that one-time expenditure out. And this kind of paints that picture. You can see that pink line down the bottom. That's the annual surplus deficit. Like I said, the $800,000 loss this year, and how that impacts your equity at the top. You know, you're pretty much right at the equity you were at in 2020 after using that 1.1 million. You're about $6.4 million of equity. Food service fund. We'll go to the next. So the assets and equity, really what this is really positive results in the food service fund, making good money there. So that's all in cash and, you know, revenues. So if you go to the next slide, you can see here, your revenue's up $130,000. It's the CEP. Now you've been, you know, the CEP, and then during the pandemic, you were 100% free. What happened this year is New York State, and if you go to the next slide, you can actually see it. New York State there, that state sources jumped a lot. So what they chose to do was kind of backfill the paid to make you full, like you're 100% free. And they did this for every school in the state. And that really kind of propped up the school lunch funds. And that was a $130,000 increase in state sources. So that was a big increase for the food service fund. And while that you have that big increase in revenues, your expenditures were only up about 40 grand. And if you go to the next slide, most of it is related to cost of sales. So you serve more meals, you get more cost of those meals. And here you can see the expenditures and the revenues. So you've had 5 years of positive results in the food service fund. If you had 2019 on here, you actually had a loss that year. And historically, before that, you were in a loss pretty much every year. And you were doing a general fund transfer to subsidize the school lunch fund. But since pandemic funding came through, you've kind of maintained positive results. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that your equity, that first year, you see where the revenue and the net income and the equity line are the same at 50,000. That's the first year you started at 0, actually. That jumped you up to 50, and it's grown to 375 currently. So you're sitting on $375,000 of equity over there. And the state is kind of coming down on districts and saying, how are you gonna spend that? So that is something to start consider, you know, upgrading equipment, things like that. Special aid fund, so this houses your grants, your state and federal grants. So you can see here that middle group, the federal revenue jumped up a lot in 2022. So that's when a lot of the pandemic funding started coming in, the CRISA, the ARP, the CARES money, all of that is propping that up. You know, it's gonna end now. So we're at the end finally. That number's probably gonna drop back down to 500,000, somewhere in that range. So just warning that's happened, but you can see you know, you've gotten a lot of money in over the last 3 years from those grants. And then the management letter. So we only have 2 comments. The first one, GASB 101 compensated absences. So they're gonna change how we have to calculate that for the GASB 34 long range statements. Currently right now, the way it works, anyone over 55, it's assumed their balance is gonna be payable soon. So it makes it into your numbers. They're making us change it so that even the 25-year-old is gonna have a percentage or a small part of their projected future earnings put on the liability. So, I mean, what it seems like is gonna happen is you're gonna have to go through your rosters of employees and kind of create buckets and say, somebody 25 to 30, maybe a 10% chance they make it there. Somebody 55 over, 100%. So that's really gonna track that. And then student involvement, there's one fund, I believe, in your student activities that I think is actually more of a principal fund. So, you know, have to comment on that. The whole point of extra classroom is to be student-driven entities, really. Any questions? Anything?
So SB 34 statements overall increased $1 million in fund equity.
Yes,
What makes up that $1 million? Because we know that 200,000 was the income from general fund, but typically when you add GASB 34, you wouldn't see an increase.
so the way the OPEB and the pension come in now, so if you have a decrease in your discount rate, it's actually like an add to the statements. You're almost getting a gain because you're writing off a liability in a way. So both of those went down, so it's adding to your,
So that accounted for like $700,000.
yeah. And what, like a couple years ago, it was like a $2 million effect when it went from a asset to a liability. Like it can have some pretty big swings on the GASB 34.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thanks for sending it.
Yeah.
And I did read that.
Right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful night. You take care, drive safe.
Dr. Thank you.
Yes, excellent job, Steve, and your team. Before I go to the approve the minutes, just want to step back and put, is there any more questions on the emergency management plan review that we did?
Are you holding public hearing on that?
Yeah.
Are you opening it now, or when are you opening?
We're open right now.
Oh, I have comments.
Okay.
My name is Casey Jones. I'm a district resident and also, I'm the head of Allegheny Hope and also the editor of Allegheny Hope Community News, which does a lot of information in regard to, weather related in particular, but other disaster preparedness types of activities. And, I went through the, disaster plan and, I have a lot of concerns in regard to it. It's, to me, it's very, it's not clear. For background, I started out in emergency management when I was in high school. I was the, in essence, the public information officer for the local civil defense director, who was my mentor. And I've been involved in it at different stages since that period of time. I've also taken well over a dozen FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency trainings, and also weather-related trainings and health-related trainings from the FEMA. And what I'm seeing here is that it really, to me, is very confusing. I have no idea how this system works, just reading it. It's not clearly laid out to me. The first thing is that the there doesn't seem to be a real chain of command here, or the chain of command is very confusing. In a normal, system, what happens is that you got, if you translate it to the military, you got a general and everybody else falls under that. In this, you've got, it appears to be a building, a building administrator, and it's not clear who the building administrator is, because if I understand it correctly, this is one building, you know, even though it may have different components. And then you've got a bus garage besides. Who's in charge of the bus garage? In other words, you can have a disaster, you can have a shooting incident at the bus garage. Who's in charge of all of those things? How does it integrate? And so, number two, the main thing is that there's no alerting system that's written into this plan. And you have that situation in Georgia right now, where there's a question, I don't know how many, it'll be months before somebody figures out exactly what happened. But where the mother advised the school 30 minutes ahead of time that her son was a danger, and nothing happened. And then they had the shootings. And so therefore, there needs to be, to me, an alerting system. And in other words, everybody in the building and, you know, needs to know who are you supposed to contact under what conditions and how does it work? And as soon as that happens, then you activate some sort of system. That's not laid out here at all. So there's no alerting system in this at all. Then we get involved in definitions, which basically is virtually everything, which is fine. But it says in event of, if we, on page 1, it says, in the event of emergency, the superintendent of schools, building principal or designee will serve as an incident commander. What's that mean? You know, you got 3 people that you're putting in there without any chain of command in that. Who is the incident commander and who's comes under that, who comes under that, who comes under, who activates, whatever that is. And so it says, and then it says, upon arrival of law enforcement and or emergency response personnel, period. There's something missing in there. As to what happens, I assume it gets turned over to the emergency response personnel, depending upon who they are. And in other words, who is the emergency response personnel? Is that an EMT, or is that a law enforcement person, or somebody in charge of you know, some other type of situation? So that's not clear also. And it says after relinquishing command to who is missing, it says a building principal or designee may be asked to serve in a support role, which is fine. But it says now we just went to the building principal. Who is in control of the facility? Who is, we still missing a chain of command here. It shouldn't be this, or this. It should be this, or and this. So in other words, there needs to be, from my perspective, situation here. The other thing is that I've run into this situation before when I was mayor of the city of Norwich in Chenango County. I actually ended up declaring, I think there were 7 states of emergency, 3 or 4 of them in the first 6 months I was in office. And the year before that, the mayor messed up. He was on the other side of the river and had no idea when the flood came as to what to do. And so, you know, I have some background in regard to when the chain of command doesn't work, what happens under those conditions. And we're seeing that in a lot of the school shootings, it seems to me, is that we're having a situation of who does what, where, and why. And without that being clearly laid out, who is responsible? In other words, I'm not trying to pin blame on anybody, but there needs to be, again, going back to the chain of command. Then it says on page 2, it says copies of the district level emergency management operations plan were supplied to both local and state police within 30 days of adoption. Does that mean that they already were given to them? Or does that mean they're going to be given to them afterwards? That's not clear. It sounds like they were already given it to them, but it's, you know, as they say, I'm not sure. Then down in the first non-bulleted paragraph, it says the building administrator. And I go back again to who, which, and what building is responsible to provide internal directions to all staff should any emergency or disaster occur. And that says, since the safety and health of the students and staff are of prime importance, the school safety plan should be reviewed with the building staff. And it doesn't have any here how. And to me, it should be, number 1 is that all staff should be apprised of it yearly. And there should be, before the school opens, first day of school is too late. You never know what's going to happen. And in addition to that, any new hire before they're even before they are hired, needs to be briefed on all of this, so they know what to do under all circumstances and what the procedures of the school district are under those conditions. And then we go down to the middle of the page, it goes 6 different items, identifications, meeting of people and so forth like that. Again, the question is who and how, who and how, who and how. Then we go to the 3rd page. And it says the duties of the command and operations staff. And this is a little confusing here. It says the incident commander is the superintendent and Sarah Donlin is the alternate. But the deputy incident commander is somebody else and Sarah Donlin is the alternate. That to me doesn't make any sense. You're either 1, 2, 3. You're not number 3 based upon whatever else is going on up here. I think that needs to be taken care of. And changed or modified as to what that actually means. And then it talks about the safety officer. And I find that confusing. It has overall responsibility for incident safety. Is empowered to either alter incident operations or suspend incident operations based on safety hazards and risks. In other words, is he in charge or isn't he in charge? It sounds like he's the one that's in charge, but we have incident commanders that should be in charge. And so how the system generally works is you have an incident and you have an incident commander. They're overseeing the whole operation underneath it. And so therefore, there are people that are responsible for certain pieces of that. But here, the safety officer has overall responsibility. Is he replacing the incident commander? Or is the incident commander still the incident commander? And that person's under him reporting to them. That's not clear. And then you have a public information officer, which is listed. And it says all media contact will be through this individual. Now the question in regard to what system is in place in regard to notifying all media when something occurs. Because right now I've been trying to get on a list to get information about what's going on in the school district. I have a very difficult time doing that. I haven't pressed it because I've been very busy on other things, but I've asked to be on the list several times and I basically am not on the list. I see things in other places. So then we have, the other pieces in here too. But, and then let me see the last page. Then on the last page, we have definition responsibilities of the person in charge. It says the building administrator is the person in charge of the building. Well, I'm not sure, you have an incident commander who is basically superintendent of schools. Is he the building administrator or is the building administrator somebody else that's not defined well? And so who is in charge of the building? And what building are you talking about again? This is one building here and you got another facility next door. Where does that come into this picture? And so that's that too. And then the person in charge of the building will do this, 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 and this. Again, now it says take control after being notified of emergency. Well, before that, you just gave that up to the, or said that was the safety officer is going to be doing that. So again, you've got conflicts in regard to this whole system. And so therefore, based upon all these things, I think that you need to start over again and basically create your chain of command. As to what exactly it is, how it exactly works, and from the chain of command, who's responsible for what. You set forth a learning system in here that tells everybody in the district, every employee in the district, here's what you need to do under these circumstances. And that becomes your plan. But right now, that's not clear. And if I was working here, I would have no idea what you're talking about as to who's who, because it's not really clear. I could ask some questions, but if I ask a question, I get an answer, somebody else asks a question, somebody else gets an answer, it may not be the same answer. And so it depends on who you ask. And so I would suggest this is not ready to be approved by any means and needs to be worked on quite a bit in order to be anything that's usable and workable. When you have a system like this that's laid out in this manner, it leads to a lot of confusion, and confusion leads to a lot of problems. And you see that all over the country at different times. Emergencies, people don't plan for. You can't plan for every emergency to begin with. But what happens is that if you're not aware that you need to be planning, looking to see what at least the common denominators are, doesn't matter if it's a snowstorm, doesn't matter if it's shooting incident, doesn't matter what it is that when it's happening, it's too late. You just basically flying by the seat of your pants, and that's when people get hurt. That's when people die. That's when disasters occur, property and all of that. And so that's my take on this.
Well, we definitely understand and hear your concerns. I'm not a lawyer by any means, so I'm gonna let, Dr. Schmidt speak on this, but our copy in-house for our employees and, staff spells out the chain of command for the school itself. The public, I don't believe does, but I'll let Dr. Schmidt speak on that.
So yeah, we're obligated to have a public dissemination of information and a private dissemination of information for all of our safety plans. What I can assure you is that we have an outstanding relationship with law enforcement. We have multiple law enforcement members on our school board. We are in constant communication with all areas of law enforcement. We have frequent visits from the sheriff's department and from the New York State troopers coming through our building and having conversations. We are constantly drilling and drafting scenarios. Over the past 10 years, we have not only had tabletop activities, we've hosted a mock school shooting. In the past, we have run and updated these plans consistently. The last 3 years, we have started regional school resource officer meetings where we meet with law enforcement, probation, social services, as well as other school resource officers in schools in the district. And we talk about best practices, we talk about safety plans, and we implement those. As far as the training for our staff, you're spot on. All of our staff, before they enter any classroom, the students are well trained in what our emergency response protocols are. They have multiple documents that they can refer to as needed. Those documents are posted not only on the walls of the classroom, but also in a flip chart. So when they come in, they're well prepared. We do an annual sub training twice a year in advance of the school year and in the semester to ensure that all substitute teachers and support staff are well trained in our emergency plans. And so I understand the plan itself is vague. What I can say to you that's intentionally so. Because one of the recommendations we get when we develop these plans is that we don't want our responses to be public, so that when we respond, if there was a danger or a threat to the school, people can predict our reactions. What I can assure you is that we take school safety very seriously. We have a veteran leadership team who is well versed on how we respond. We have a great team of leaders, and so whether the concern is here in the main building, whether it's in the bus garage, whether it's out back, we have a team that will respond quickly and is well trained to do so.
Well, I think that's good, and it sounds good, and it's important. This document doesn't reflect it at all. And, you know, I understand the issue in regard to vagueness in regard to how you respond. But when you have a document like this that doesn't address and say any of those things, I'm not saying it needs to list all of those things. I'm saying it doesn't address any of those things. And what you just said, to me, needs to be in this document so that if somebody looks at it, they say, gee, you know, this is good. You know, in fact, it's a deterrent. When somebody has a document that is public and is provided to the public, it says, here are the things, not again, listing everything and how you're going to respond accordingly for each piece of thing. But when they see a document that basically says, you know what you're doing, there's a deterrent effect in there, in my opinion, in regard to, well, maybe I go someplace else and I won't do that here. And so, but this document, as I say, if I read this document as a public consultant, I'd say, gee, they don't even know what they're doing. Where you're saying that we're doing all of these things, but it's not reflected in this. And so to me, that needs to be reflected in this, not, as I say, the particulars of how it's reflected, but this is what we do. And what you just basically said, so that when the public takes a look at this or anybody else takes a look at it, they say, gee, these people got their act together. And so I feel better about that.
Well, I want to commend you because you are taking a look at it. In 12 years, you were the first person to come to a board meeting and ever provide comment. We've had open periods of comment. So thank you for that.
Well, I tend to do that.
That's exactly what I was gonna say is,
Yeah.
you're one of the few that have probably looked at that, read it, pointed it out to us. It's intentionally left vague for that purpose, for someone of your stature or of your nature to come in and ask those questions. And we provide you that information in here, but it's not something that is generally provided to the public of how we deal with an emergency situation. For the public to read and address and maybe even plan for an attack or something of that nature. So I think it's wonderful that you're here. So.
Well, I think that the going back to the pieces that after, when something happens, that's when the people start looking at documents like this and say they were never prepared. This is when people say, well, it's like every time, there's a, ice incident in the south. Well, they didn't know what they were doing. Well, go to Buffalo, they didn't know what they were doing. And so they start looking at all this stuff and then it's too late. You got all this stuff here and saying, yeah, you look, I'm looking at this and it's terrible. Why didn't they do this? And so, it again goes back to, even though one of the things in regard to everything, and I deal with this, I've dealt with this for a few years, is that, most organizations really don't tell anybody what they're doing. And so as a result of that, people don't know, so they don't, like, I just happened to stumble across this. And I only stumbled across it because I'm in the, I check the board in the post office, every week. And so I saw that, emergency management, what's that all about? So then I got it, and very frankly, I had a hard time finding this. Because I went to the board, I went to the website, I looked on the Board of Education, I had no agenda posted there. I put in a search agenda, couldn't find an agenda. And then, I kept looking and looking and looking, and finally I found this. So I don't know how people comment on something they can't see. And then when I looked at it, it said 6 pages, holy smolies. That's an emergency plan, and so now that I have an explanation, which I'm glad that that's been done and you're cognizant and you're working on all that. This needs to be changed, I believe, in order to reflect some of that, what some of that explanation is. So the rest of the public has an opportunity to know it, even if they never read it. But at least you have it, and if something happens, you can say, well, we have this. And prevention is a lot of public information, it's a lot of prevention. And it's just like right now, we do a lot with weather, by not our choice, but seem to be the default weather consolidator for Allegheny County, because emergency management system in this county, very frankly, is very poor. There are pieces of it, like, these people know what they're doing, this person, but we're the only ones that publish anything in regard to weather. We were the first to put out, other than the code red, in regard to severe, well, it wasn't even code red the other day, with the tornado in Word and Friendship. We actually put out the severe thunderstorm warning. The Weather Service put it out, but most people don't see that. We put it out to the public. And then if people were tracking that, they would have also been seeing the tornado warning at the same time, and then code red kicked in. And in fact, the Weather Service did report it for the tornado warning, I think it was 15 minutes after something else happened. So there's all these things have to do with information. If public doesn't respond if they don't know what they responded to, or if they don't have that information.
Casey, I appreciate you making that statement, and I agree. What we try to do is be transparent with our processes where we can be. And what I also say is that in July of this year and then July of next year, the state has put on new requirements, and so the entire document is going to have a major overhaul, and it's one of the goals we're setting. I believe we're going to talk about setting as a Board of Education of having a very transparent process to review these plans, as well as to ensure that our faculty, staff, students, community have the utmost confidence in our abilities to respond. And to date, from my experience, feel free to disagree with me if you do. People understand what they're supposed to do in an emergency, and when we have had situations, I'll give an example. Last week, 5 minutes before dismissal, we had a dump truck take out 2 power lines and take down 10 power lines, and I'm very proud of the response by our team to ensure that we were able to, 1, effectively dismiss all our students safely, 2, communicate with our public that the road was blocked and how they can get access to their kids very quickly in a manner that, to my knowledge, we had no issues dismissing students other than somewhere. The most was 15 minutes late arriving home because they had to go different. So, but I appreciate your comments, and I certainly want to assure you that as we go forward with the updating of these plans, that we're going to be actively looking for input, as well as managing all of the expectations that the student bonds. What I can say is that these documents meet those standards. I wouldn't put them forward.
Once again, I'd like to thank you for coming in. I think the whole board appreciates public comment coming in. What Dr. Schmidt said, continuing working with the state and their recs about how we're supposed to put out the information. You know, as of, this is my 9th year, and we typically have always put it out the way you see it. It's not the way the board sees it, but it's the way you see it, and I can understand the frustration that you have reading that, because it does kind of just go everywhere. But, we're definitely working on that. It was part of one of our committees that we put together, so. So we'll definitely keep you informed, and we thank you for your time.
Okay.
All right, moving on, I need a motion to approve the minutes of August 21st. Come on. All right. James is the second, Max the first. Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I think everybody have their copies of the administrator's reports. Does have anything for us?
Great start.
Great start. Classes are full. The most full I've seen at the elementary for at least the past 15 years. Classes last year, just to put it in perspective, last year I had one class over 40. This year I have one class under 40. So there's been a big change with waiting lists in pre-K that we haven't ever seen since I've been here. It's the first year we've seen waiting lists. So there's a large influx of people.
About the department, so is that really?
What's that?
That's really your department.
Yeah, things have been going well. Kids from other districts are getting acclimated and we've had positive feedback from a lot of our kids. So it's
Good, Sarah? All of everything good? All right. There. Financial reports.
Yeah, I just had the audit for tonight, so if there are any further questions on that.
That covered a lot.
With
I
that,
think that covered a lot.
Yeah. Once again, thank you, Andy. It was great. I had a long conversation with you. The auditor on the phone. It's very impressed, agency there, so. Kudos to you guys. All right, I need a motion to accept the external independent audit report. Thank you, that's just. James, Jamie with the second. Any questions, comments, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion.
Sean with motion,
Second.
Jamie with second. Any questions, comments, concerns, that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I need a motion to approve the warrant reports.
A motion.
Shell's motion,
Second.
Jamie with second. Questions, comments, concerns on warrant reports? All in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll see, under the consent agenda, there is, action items for an addendum. On the second page. The two. Like 9, 10, and 11 are all new. Like, 2 is just adding up. Right? Anybody, or can I get a motion on the consent agenda?
A motion.
Shall we motion? Actually, second. Any questions, comments, concerns for that?
Brian, remind me, last month we approved drama club. The facilitators, advisors,
We reworked the names. And so-
Okay.
So we removed them from the extended school day program. And placed them as stipend positions.
okay,
So what we're doing is appointing those stipend positions. We didn't do that last.
okay, this Yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, but we created positions, but we didn't appoint the individuals to the position.
Yeah, because I was curious about that last one too, so this makes sense. Okay.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Like the Senate? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I need we're on the personal action items. I need a motion to amend the motion. For Haley Silsby. Motion. You have the motion.
I'll second.
So second. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? All in favor?
Aye.
No. Motion carried. We need a motion to approve long-term substitute teacher aide, Kayla Edmister.
Motion.
Jamie with the motion, I'll second. Max with the second. Any questions, concerns with Kayla? All in favor?
Aye.
Both. Motion carried. I need a motion to accept the resignation of Peyton Watson. James motion,
I'll second.
Jamie. Jamie with the second. Any questions, concerns, comments with that?
Sad to see her go.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to appoint full-time teachers aide, Nathan Slauson. Oh, did I do it already? Look it up for that one, so my bad. Still into quick. I need a motion right back to D to accept the resignation of Nathan Slauson as a long-term substitute teacher aide.
A motion.
Sean with the motion.
I'll second.
Max with a second. Any questions, comments, concerns with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh. Motion carried. Now we're on D. I need a motion to appoint full-time teachers aide, Nathan Slauson.
I'll make a motion.
James with the motion.
I'll second.
Sean with the second. Any questions, concerns, comments with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to approve long-term substitute teacher aide, Billy Walt.
I'll motion.
Michelle with the motion.
Second.
Lance with the second. Any questions, comments, concerns on that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. I need a motion to approve department coordinator and advisor. Department coordinator for special ed, Sabrina Weshy, with yearbook advisor, Cassidy Knoll. Second,
I'll second.
so second,
I might have missed some correspondence here at all. Questions, comments? Answer.
any questions, comments, or concerns?
I mean, like, I sent an email, I didn't get a response from you. So I don't know if there's any questions additional. I heard none from the. Very simply put, we had one applicant for the position, and the concerns were brought forward were appropriate. However, the position had evolved from a position where it was a traditional department chair who was overseeing the department, who was evaluating teachers, who was responsible for curriculum. The role has evolved into someone who attends meetings, facilitates conversations, and is a conduit of communication between the principal and the department, and then the leadership council and the department. And so given that this person is interested and eager to take a leadership role within the department, is not evaluating other staff, I support the recommendation. Had there been an evaluation component to this, I would not be supporting it. the recommendation.
My question / concern is, and I spoke with Brian about this after I left to get to about more. In this role, with this teacher not being tenure, is there any negative effect that could cause between her and an administrator that is going to be evaluating her in this position now? So,
Because from my lens, first of all, we promote a culture where people are speaking up and advocating. There's not a culture of reprisal. There's not a culture. And so her job is, if she's having a conversation with a colleague, is to either help them try to solve an issue or to help encourage them to bring the issue forward. If the colleague's not willing to bring it forward, then they act and advocate on behalf of the colleague to bring it forward to leadership. And all the while, they have union representation that they can always go to if they're not comfortable coming to leadership, because we have multiple pathways for communication with issues. And so from my lens, there's no opportunity that this person is going to do something that would jeopardize their tenure based upon this role.
that's my
Not
concern.
I do, it wasn't
If I'll sincerely, if I had that concern, I wouldn't have made a recommendation.
Yeah, to be clear, it wasn't an issue with the candidate.
No.
Protecting the candidate.
Yeah, and again, the options we have here are to appoint this person right now, or we don't have a person in that role. In my lens, I'd rather have someone in that role to help with communication back and forth with the department, than then to have it vacant.
Well, like I said, I'm just more concerned that there's not gonna be no negative consequences on her tenure over this. That's my opinion. And
If I could foresee that, well, yeah, I would absolutely not. In any way, shape, or form.
And just to, make a statement, this is kind of. This is putting it out there that. If it ever happens again and we have a non-tenure, that we have to follow the same procedure. What I mean,
Well, here's what I would say is that we have a process that they apply for. And so in this circumstance, we had one person, but remember, we don't have to do anything because the recommendation is coming not only from the leadership team, but it's coming from me too. So that process is still there. And at any point, we can say, we don't recommend an individual for this position because of whatever that is, regardless of whether they're tenured or not tenured. This is
I just want to make sure, that this is set a precedent, so if somebody does come in for another coordinator position, that they have the ability to say, well, you cannot deny me because I'm not tenured. That's all I.
well, in all sincerity, we want the best people in these roles and people who are willing to step up and volunteer and give their time and effort to do that.
And I definitely take your guys' that's your job. I'm not worried about that. And I just want to make sure everybody knew that precedent's being set and that this teacher being not tenure is protected. It's not gonna affect her. So that's my biggest concern. Other than that, I'm good. Anybody have any questions, concerns, comments? All in favor? No.
Thank you, Rob.
Oh, did I? All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Still H. And then
H and I, right? I need a motion to appoint part-time bus monitor and part-time cafe monitor and Colin Elster. Next, we have a motion.
I'll say.
John with the second. Any questions, concerns, comments for Letty? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Now we'll move over to the addendum. Under personnel actions, I approve extra work day for Reagan Ryan.
Motion.
Second with motion. Max with a second. Any questions, comments, concerns with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Information discussion. Who's that? Dr. Smith.
On Tuesday, the 8th of October is our work session. So please get forward any topics that you have for the work session forward. As far as, and then November 12th is our following board meeting. Just some updates, as Brian and Mr. alluded to, our numbers are up significantly across the board, which is great to see. And those numbers are listed there. We are still, as of this publication, one shy of 600 pre-K 3 to 12, and then 33 districts of 10 units schools are homeschooled. Take note for your calendars that homecoming weekend is Friday, the 4th and 5th of October. So we have a lot of activities planned as always, so please make sure that you're able to join us at what you can. And then I handed out a draft version of work goals tonight. It's not my intention to discuss them. I'm hoping that you'll review them, talk them up, tear them apart, and then when we get together on the 8th, you guys can, hopefully in advance of that, if you want to provide feedback, I would welcome it. Or on the 8th, we can sit together if you want to wordsmith however you want to manage what those are. And you'll see what I did was basically took our conversations from the retreat, last year's goals, and kind of married what those pieces, some ideas for this year to move forward. Okay. That is all I have. Is there anything you have for me?
No. All right, I would like to, do a motion to enter executive session. Actual motion. Give it to the second. All in favor?
I
Oh.
There's a cake though, so we don't want cake.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Go to the very top. Before we kick everybody off, let's have some cake. Why, all right?
Whose birthday?
Oh, that's right, it's your birthday. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. That was really. Oh, I like it. I like it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting.